Now, new research is warning of a mass exodus from policing.
Responding to an annual pay and morale survey by the Police Federation of England and Wales, 22% of police officers said they intended to quit in the next 2 years. That is up 18% from the previous year.
And it's been reported that from March 2022 to March 23, more than 9,000 officers left the force.
Former Met Police Detective Peter Bleksley joins us, great friend of the show. Pete, good morning to you, my friend. Hardly surprising, is it?
Unfortunately not. Record numbers of officers resigning, retiring. In fact, for the first time ever, resignations trumped retirees. And as much as they're trying to shovel brand new officers in through the front door, officers are leaving through the back door, not only because of pay, but because they're poorly trained, so they're not ready to fight crime when they get onto the front line. There's no experience to show them how to do it. The supervision and management is awful a lot of the time. And, of course, morale is absolutely on the floor.
And, Peter, what's it going to mean for not only losing 9,000 officers in the force, but presumably a lot of those 9,000 are going to be some of the more experienced officers too? What's that going to do to the force?
Well, it just damages morale. And what it basically means is when you get brand new police officers coming out of training, which is lamentable and insufficient, by the way, they are then paired up with a similarly inexperienced officer. So there's not some wise old hand who's got 20 years policing behind them, showing them the way, showing them the pitfalls and showing them how to avoid all of that. They're basically fumbling around in the dark. And consequently, we see so many police officers filmed on people's cameras, getting it wrong, making wrong decisions, not knowing the law. And when those get posted on social media, and there's a huge reaction, the cops get even more gloomy and depressed about that.
Let's look at it from another side, because we spend a lot of time, and I understand why, when we think about, Carrick, and we think about, there was that animal, Wayne Couzens, and we think about Sarah Everett. We've talked about all these things and we've criticised the Met Police and other police forces, and Pete, quite rightly so. But let's talk about what that does for people who go into policing. Let's forget a lot of what you just said for 1 minute. Do you think a lot of them feel demoralised because of the criticism from the general public, which is absolutely well-founded in many instances, but do you feel that they all now perhaps feel they're tarred with the same brush to some degree?
They are, unfortunately, overly sensitive to criticism, and this includes senior police officers. They should grow a spine and quite simply be aware of the fact that policing is not a popularity contest. In fact, you want to be unpopular with criminals.
Yeah.
Keep away from social media if it's not for you. If you get affected by it, just keep off it. Don't be a part of it. And the senior police officers, grow a backbone. Don't be so affected by criticism, and rather apply all your efforts to knocking your police services into shape, solving crimes and giving the public the service that they deserve.
And Peter, how does the real terms pay now compare to when you started as a police officer? Did you feel a sense of satisfaction with the amount of money you were being paid compared to what officers are paid nowadays?
He got 2 shillings and a go, Tim.
I have to admit, I was very fortunate to really be in a period of policing that were the halcyon days in terms of pay, conditions and pension entitlements, much of which have been butchered in recent years. And this does affect police officers. Now, like so many people in the public sector, they have to work longer, pay more and get less. And I think a full review of police terms and conditions, including pay and pensions, would go some way to making the job a bit more of an attractive proposition for talented, bright, committed young people.
So, Peter, do you think there's a case for unionising the police force, for police men and women to potentially, I know they can't in the UK, it's against the law for, I believe, that the police and the army to go on strike. We've seen strikes with nurses, with doctors, teachers, barristers. Do you think that police should be allowed to go on strike to demand better pay and conditions?
No, absolutely not. They have a federation which is tearing itself asunder, actually, and fails the rank and file in many different ways. But they have that federation. That needs to be made into a robust, properly functioning professional organisation. But you mentioned the army. I had the great honour of going to Sandhurst on Saturday because one of my sons is hoping to become an officer in the army. And as I enjoyed the wonders of the Royal Military Academy and listened to all the speakers, whether they be male, female, gay, straight or whatever, if we had senior army officers in charge of policing, they would knock it into shape within a year.
It's very interesting that, and I know a lot of people would cheat and go, "Why are you criticising?" You're criticising because you care, don't you, Pete? You did it for a long, long time. People are not being served. There's a demoralised workforce, whatever the reasons of that are. And I go back to something, we're heading to an election. Final question. You know, for me, a strong police force, war on crime was always the number one thing. You don't see it anymore. It feels like the streets are taking over to a degree, doesn't it, in certain cities?
It certainly does. And yet politicians will spout nonsense when they say crime has never been lower. We've never been safer. Well, get out onto the streets and ask people how they feel. And then you will discover just what a huge untruth that is.
Good man, Pete. Thank you so much indeed.